Hey everyone, so today I want to talk about The Butcher of the Forest by Premee Mohamed and why I think that this book is a great entry point into horror. It's a fantasy horror book, but essentially there's a forest, people who enter never return, except for this one woman, and this one woman's name is Varys. She's an older woman in her 40s, and this tyrant who has taken over her village and is a murderous dude, just a monster, well, his kids have entered this forest. And Varys, our main character, is the only person that anyone knows of that has entered this forest in the past and came out alive. So he, the tyrant, wants to go and get Varys, and basically he forces her to go into this forest to go and fetch his children. So by the end of this, hopefully you'll see where I'm coming from and why I think this is a great entry point into horror. So Varys, again, older woman in her 40s, she is going to go into this forest, so she prepares, and then she sets off to go into this forest. She doesn't want to, obviously, and we'll talk more about the dilemma here in a little bit that she has with going and, saving this monster, this tyrant, his children. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But yeah, so it's not straight horror. It's a lot of fantasy horror. There's some fantasy elements in it as well. And what's really cool about this forest is those fantasy elements, because it denies, and those cosmic elements as well, because it denies like all laws of physics. The trees shift. There's a cottage where it's longer on the inside than it is on the outside, and just some really cool. Varys wanders around with trinkets in her hands that help guide her through this forest, and these trinkets are kind of what helped her during her first excursion. And that back and forth, where there's a lot of questions set up at the very beginning of the story about, hold on, she's the first person to ever escape this forest. Let's hear a little bit about that excursion. What happened there? How did she get out? And you learn that throughout the present story here, where she's trying to save the children, and then it kind of reflects on the past, and you learn little by little as it goes. But yeah, that's some of the fantasy elements. In one section that had really good imagery was when she approaches that cottage I was talking about. So that cottage is guarded by a bunch of undead animals, and that's all I will say. I'll leave that for you guys to read and learn, because that section specifically is one that stuck with me throughout this story. And I guess talking a little bit on that, this is a shorter story than usual. It's like 150 pages, so it's a pretty quick read, which kind of, it has its pros, it has its cons, and we'll talk about the cons in just a second. But yeah, that dual timeline where you have the past excursion of Varys unfolding while the present one where she's trying to save these children moves on was a very compelling one. It's a pretty fast moving plot overall. Like, you get the questions again, it's very early into the book, and then those are just answered gradually throughout it. The only kind of bad thing is when we did get some of those reveals, some of the reveals were good, but some were just kind of, I just wish we got more. And again, that's just kind of probably the shortcomings of having a shorter story, is you can't pack in that much depth with all of that into a shorter story, into a 150 page book. But what we learn about Varys' backstory and that excursion is very interesting, and some of it is pretty heavy stuff. I'll keep it pretty vague, but Varys, when she was younger, goes through some real trauma, and I do kind of wish that was explored a little bit more, but I can understand and appreciate the mystery of our main character's past and how that plays a big role in this story. I also loved the dilemma that Varys faced, because this tyrant, again, is a murderous monster, but seems to really care about his children. And Varys juggles the idea of not saving his children, because they might just grow up and just be just like their father and be a monster. So she could stop all that right now by not saving them, right? Because they would just get trapped in this forest and die. And then she finally meets the children, and it's all just very interesting. That once she finally meets the children and they start having their conversations and everything, that was all super interesting stuff. I really love that portion of the book. But I mean, honestly, I'd probably consider that to be the best section of the book, is when she finally meets the children. Just the dynamic that she has with these kids, especially when you learn more about her past. But I'm not going to go into spoilers here. But once you learn more about her past, it kind of makes sense on why she's having these thoughts. What I would have liked to have more in this story is just more character development with the side characters. Again, probably just a con of having a shorter 150 page book. Obviously, if this was longer, the author would have been able to pack in more depth with these side characters. But that was honestly it. I just wanted to be in the world a little bit longer. A little bit longer. It wraps up super nicely. I enjoyed it. Pretty much everything gets tied up and everything is good. But yeah, I kind of wish I really like the world that Premee Mohamed built with this book, and I just wanted to live in that world a little bit longer. So yeah, if you're a big fantasy fan and you've always wanted to, dabble with horror a little bit, but not go into like a straight horror, like epic or big novel or anything, then I think The Butcher of the Forest is a great one for you to pick up and read, especially if you're curious about cosmic horror and when it meets fairy tale. I think this book would be a very fun read for you. You can get through it pretty quick with it being 150 pages. But yeah, I recommend this book. It was a very fun read. Enjoyed it throughout the entirety of reading it, which I did in 2 days or something. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Just want to talk about The Butcher of Forest a little bit. I'm starting to dabble more in horror books, so I kind of started with this one. I think it's a good entry point into, some of the elements that make horror stick with you and everything. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.